Hey, good afternoon, everybody. The continuing video number 2 regarding buying a business and the steps to buying the business. A little more of an elaboration on taking charge. We're going to talk about the team that you're going to put together to do a deal. So, often assumed, yes, you need an attorney, yes, you need an accountant, and yes, you need a business broker. But where it gets sketchy and gets twisted is when those three parties or professionals don't talk to each other and don't get along. So let's go through them each one by one. Your attorney. You need to make sure the attorney has done this stuff before at the level we're talking about. So if you're buying a $200,000 pizza parlor, don't engage an M&A attorney from Manhattan that's used to doing stock transactions at the private equity level, right? 50 million, 60 million. A, you're going to pay a crap load of money. And B, how business gets done there is different than how it's done there. The principles remain the same, but two totally different ecosystems. So you need to make sure the person you're dealing with, understands the ecosystem that we're operating in, and then isn't going to overcomplicate what should be a simple process. So they are fiduciaries. Your attorney is a fiduciary, which means they have an obligation to do what's right for you and to protect you and work on your behalf. There are good ones and bad ones. Please don't go out and hire a Swiss Army knife attorney. What do I mean by Swiss Army knife? What I mean is don't hire someone who's a business attorney, a divorce attorney, a tax attorney, a litigator, a real estate attorney. You need to hire people who do what you are doing, which is managing contracts and reviewing business sales, purchase agreements, and leases related to business acquisitions. Ideally, you want to hire someone local, specifically in Florida, who is familiar with the Business Brokers of Florida contract and or the Transworld contract, because we're the largest and those are the two types of contracts you're going to see the most. You don't want to be drawing up standard contracts with a few exceptions, what we'll talk about later, usually larger transactions that may come into play. But you don't want to be creating incremental legal fees by starting documents from scratch. So what are we going to talk about here? I'm going to give you some questions that you want to ask when you're considering an attorney to help you in buying a business. One is you want to ask them if you're going to have a direct contact with them personally or through their paralegal. You'll find some attorneys are open, some are not, but you need to respect their time. Don't ask for a cell phone and then call them at all hours of the night. That's unprofessional. These people generally make money by the hour. So you have to be recognizing, you're not their only client. So if you negotiate a lower fee, don't be harassing the snot out of them with what's important questions to you, but silly questions to them, because they're going to want to bill you more and the relationship's going to crumble. So ask the question about direct contact. Who are they dealing with, paralegal or attorney? Ask them if they're familiar with the Business Brokers of Florida documentation, the purchase contracts, the addendums, the non-disclosures, etc., or are they preferring to use their own forms? Because that has an impact on your fees on the back end. Are they available after hours? Can you call them at 5 o'clock? But again, remember not to abuse that. That can be a little bit of a pain in the ass and they'll piss them off. How are they going to charge you? Are you going to negotiate a flat bucket fee or are they going to charge you by the hour? Deals like this, under the $500,000 mark generally should be, not that complicated. And if they're familiar with the BBF and they're familiar with the brokers involved and the accountants involved, they're all kind of on the same sheet of music. So hiccups get mitigated, hence hours of legal cost get drawn down. Ask them if they've worked with the brokers in question who you're working with. If the brokers have good relationships, it doesn't mean that the attorney's being influenced. It just means they understand how they work together. They understand their protocols. They understand the forms. They are attuned to how each other works, and that helps smooth things out and mitigate hiccups and therefore costs. Ask the attorney if they will give you references, more than one. They should not hesitate to do that. They should be willing to do that. And test their reasonableness. Do they try and be combative? How do they negotiate? Are they trying to fight? Because fighting creates hiccups. Hiccups create cost, and cost hits you in the pocket. You want to find someone who's reasonable, who understands that getting a business deal done is about protecting you, but also making sure that you're equitable in terms of negotiating a reasonable deal for both parties. Because really the only way the deal is going to get done is if the buyer and seller are both happy and it's a negotiated deal that's reasonable. You want to test their temperament. You want to ask about their experience. The guy who's a litigator and fights in court, or a divorce attorney who fights in court, is not the same person who negotiates a business contract and deals with a bank. They are different skills, different talents, and you do not necessarily want a sledgehammer when a screwdriver is what's more appropriate for the job at hand. So temperament and experience, are they professional in negotiation? You want to ask about their communication skills, how attuned to technology are they, how quick do they respond to questions, and ideally, finally, you want to make sure they're licensed in the state of Florida. Really, really important, because the rules here are different. Business contracts are generally governed under real estate law here, with a few exceptions. But that's the governing principle for small business here is Florida real estate law. So a lawyer from New York or from Ohio may not know the nuances of transaction law here or business law. So those are 10 things I think you should ask your attorneys. And then I want to talk a little bit about your CPA. CPA also, fiduciary, meaning they have a responsibility to take care of you. You want to make sure that you understand the difference between a CPA and accountant and what the CPA designation really means as it relates to their skills and their responsibilities to you as a client. Huge difference between the two. Doesn't mean accountants are bad. It's just there's a whole fiduciary layer that gets up there when you're dealing with CPAs. Their expectations on professionalism is incrementally higher. You want to ask about their bandwidth, how they communicate, their staff. If you're doing a due diligence process during tax season, you are going to have some problems because that is their busiest season. So you really want to gauge, does the accountant have the resources to get the deal done to the expectations you're requiring of them to meet the timelines of the contract? Oftentimes accountants miss deadlines, and that's because they have a million clients peppering them all at once, and it becomes very hard to manage. So if you're negotiating them down on price because you want to pay the cheapest amount for due diligence, realize that the quality, because look, at the end of the day, staffing a due diligence problem requires labor and time and expertise. If you're working them down, you're going to be the back of the pile on the project, and that has an impact on timeline, and timeline kills contracts. So you don't meet timelines on contracts, deals fall apart. You want to really define with your CPA what the scope of work is going to be. They are not doing a full audit on a due diligence, but because that's really, 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 really expensive. So you want to understand what they're going to do, how they're going to test the books, what they're going to look for. You want to be copied on all the communication between the broker, the lawyer, and the CPA, because you're the client, and you want to understand what work they are doing. So when they come back with their final report, you've seen the scope and you've understand how they come to their conclusions and recommendations. You want to know what their fee is. Are they charging by the hour? Are they charging flat? You want to make sure they communicate well with the attorney and the brokers involved, and you want to make sure they're familiar with the attorney and the broker involved. Just like when we were talking about your attorney, you want to ask about ongoing support post-transaction, i.e. can they do your bookkeeping? Can they do your tax filings? Can they support you with merchant services? Do they have resources for like private lending and banking and mortgages and financial planning and all that type of stuff? Do they set up entities, i.e. do they set up corporations? And then what is the best type of corporation for you, depending upon what your financial objectives are? So that's CPAs. One area we see CPAs get into trouble with is they sometimes lay in and start giving opinions of value. I literally 5 minutes ago hung up. A CPA called me and asked me for what the valuation was on a business, and he went on an armchair, cocktail napkin statistic on multiples, and I rattled it. So rattled it off to him real quick with the obvious caveat that I needed more detail, but I gave him a range. But sometimes CPAs will give opinions, and what they start rattling off is comps and what they think things are worth. Not uncommon for sellers to think that their accountants would know that data, but the accountants don't have access to the comps. So they're giving really static numbers that they read in a book somewhere at some point in time, which doesn't reflect the market, which is really, really dangerous. You want your accountants doing their job, just as you want your attorney doing their job. And giving an opinion of value is just that, and it's an opinion. It doesn't reflect the market, and the market's what's going to dictate the value of your business. Finally, your business broker. of the 3 professionals on this team, they're the only one who's not getting paid by the hour. Therefore, they're kind of incented to make sure that everything's working right and everybody's communicating. Again, they need to have a good relationship with the attorney and the accountant. They need to make sure that information is flowing through all the parties and that they're meeting the timelines. A good broker is like a bird dog. They kind of sniff out problems and eliminate them before they happen. In Florida, you need to be a licensed real estate professional to do business. That does not mean you should be a realtor. There's a world of difference between a real estate agent and a business broker. The skill set is completely different. The marketing is completely different. If you were to look at the training period in the real estate course for business brokerage, it's literally 2 pages in the broker exam and a paragraph on the sales associate. So don't get it twisted and hire a real estate agent because they have no idea what they're doing. Conversely, I'm a real estate broker and I would never try and buy a property on my own. I just don't have the experience. So you can check whether someone's licensed as a real estate broker by going to the Florida DBPR, that's Delta, Papa, Bravo, Romeo, and you'll be able to pull up the licensee's name and see if their license is active. When you go to my ebook, you're going to see a link in page 7 that says the 10 questions you should ask your broker before engaging them. I'm not going to go over all that in detail right now, but suffice it to say, it's a great YouTube video you should look up. If you wanted to go to YouTube and look it up, you'd find it there as well. So here's some benchmarks. Good business brokers, they don't do real estate. If they're selling a piece of ground, it's part of a deal. A good broker as a benchmark does a minimum of 10 transactions a year. If they're not, they're part-time and aren't in the business. Now, if they're not in the business, how the heck are they funding operations, i.e. paying for advertising and eating and all this other stuff? You got to ask those questions because being active and doing work actually is an indicator of success. You want to ask your broker what their co-brokerage percentage is. How often do they work with other brokers? That's important because that's an indicator of their reasonableness and their ability to get deals done in teamwork type fashion with other brokers. You want to find out how long they've been in the business. And believe it or not, the average business broker lasts about 6 months. So if you got a guy who's been doing it for 3 and you're trying to sell your business, which is a large investment, you want to make sure it's the right person. Same thing if you're a buyer and they've done 3 deals and the guy across the table has done 100, chances are the guy across the table's got some tricks up their sleeves that the rookie doesn't have. Are they full-time people? And how skilled are they in technology? So why do I say that one? Well, simply put, our industry is filled with is kind of generational. It has a ton of people that are aging out and are lacking in technological skills. Believe it or not, there's still brokers out there using flip phones who don't know how to use technology to either track information, collate information. They're physically making copies of documents as opposed to using share drives and drop folders and things like that. That can make the nuances of doing a deal and cooperating with the other parties, the lawyers, the accountants, the banks, the CPAs, really, really hard if you don't have technological skills to communicate and distribute information in a confidential and quick manner. So that is my synopsis. Video 2, reference to taking charge and your team. Any questions, as always, www.yourfloridabusinessbroker.com or call me 321-287-0349.